Praise be to Jesus. Hi, everyone. All right, so let's continue here. January 21st, 2016. Lutheran group reportedly given Holy Communion in St. Peter's Basilica. A Lutheran group from Finland, led by their bishop Samuel Salmi of Oulu, reportedly received Holy Communion in St. Peter's Basilica this week, despite indicating to the priests present that they were ineligible to do so. According to Finnish news agency Kotima, at the time of communion, the Finnish Lutherans put their right hand on their left shoulder to show that they could not receive the Eucharist and wanted to receive a blessing instead. The Finnish Lutheran bishop said the priests distributing communion ignored the sign and offered the Lutherans communion anyway. The bishop also received the Eucharist. Bishop Salmi said Pope Francis was not present at the Mass, but said the Pope had repeatedly indicated he would like to develop unity between different denominations. The bishop, who in 2011 said homosexuals should have full rights in the Lutheran Church, also told the news agency that Pope Francis has theological enemies in the Vatican and so may be limited in how freely he can speak. That's from the National Catholic Register. January 22nd, Pope Francis met with Apple CEO Tim Cook, ABC News. January 25th, Pope Francis intends to participate in a joint ceremony of the Catholic Church and the World Lutheran Federation to commemorate the 500th anniversary of the Reformation in Lund, Sweden on October 31st, 2016. That's from the Vatican. Well, we know all this happened, so. January 26th, Pope Francis asked Protestants for forgiveness for past persecution. Oh, I wonder what that's about. Oh, that's from Reuters. January 27th, Pope Francis said to bless human-animal chimeras. Huh? A Spanish scientist, Juan Carlos Belmonte, a prominent stem cell biologist, told Scientific American that Pope Francis personally blessed his cutting-edge research to mix human cells into animal bodies. Wow. Belmonte told Scientific American, quote, Spain is a very Catholic country, so we have to go through the Pope. He very nicely said yes, the current Pope. So the Vatican is behind this research and has no problem based on the idea is to help humankind. That's going to help humankind? Crossing human cells into animal bodies. And in theory, all that we will be doing is killing pigs, unquote. The Pontifical Academy of Sciences, the Vatican scientific body, did not respond to an email seeking to confirm Pope Francis's position. This is from MIT Technology Review. Oh boy, what are we in for here? January 28th, Leonardo DiCaprio meets Pope to talk about the environment. DiCaprio, who is known as Leo, was received by Pope Francis, the Vatican said, without giving details, from Reuters. February 2nd, Pope Francis to make acting debut. He will play himself in the new religious movie, quote, Beyond the Sun, unquote, marking his acting debut and the first time that a pope has appeared in a feature film. That's from Variety. February 2nd, Pope Francis urges world not to fear China's rise. In an interview, Pope Francis said, quote, "For me, China has always been a reference point of greatness, a great country, but more than a country, a great culture with a inexhaustible wisdom," unquote. And also a communist country. And, communism and Catholicism are, the opposites of each other. February 5th, Pope Francis released new prayer intention video. Quote, "Care for creation," unquote. He says, quote, "Believers and unbelievers agree that the earth is our common heritage, the fruits of which should benefit everyone. However, what is happening in the world we live in, the relationship between poverty and the fragility of the planet requires another way of managing the economy and measuring progress, conceiving a new way of living, because we need a change that unites us all, free from the slavery of consumerism. This month, I make a special request that we may take good care of creation, a gift given freely, cultivated and protecting it for future generations, caring for our common home," unquote. This is from thepopevideo.org. February 5th, Pope Francis spoke about John the Baptist, saying, quote, "But he also suffered in prison. Let us say the word, the interior torture of doubt. Quote, but maybe I made a mistake. This Messiah is not how I imagined the Messiah would be," unquote. And he invited his disciples to ask Jesus, quote, "But tell us the truth. Are you he who is to come?" Unquote. Because that doubt made him suffer. Quote, "Was I mistaken in proclaiming someone who isn't who I thought?" Unquote. The suffering, the interior solitude of this man, quote, "I, on the other hand, must diminish, but diminish thus in soul, in body, in everything," unquote. From Vatican Radio. Let's see how we're doing with time here. Okay. February 8th, in an interview, Pope Francis said, quote, "Europe must and can change. It can and must reform itself. If it is unable to financially help the countries from which the refugees come from, you must face the problem of how to address this great challenge that is primarily humanitarian, but not only. It is an educational system is broken. That transmitting values from grandparents to grandchildren, from parents to children. It is appropriate to consider the problem of how to rebuild it. Often, Bergoglio uses a biblical metaphor. He compares the old continent to Sarah, the wife of Abraham. Sarah was sterile, and when she was more than 70 years old, according to the customs of those remote times, she gave her slave to her husband so he could father a child on her. But then, miraculously, she succeeded in having one at the age of 90. Europe, Francis loves to repeat, is like Sarah, who first feared but then smiled secretly. His hope, referring to what he had said, is that Europe will smile secretly at the immigrants. It's like nothing surprises you anymore. We're only up to 2016. Here, let me see. Let me check the time here. Okay, we're going to do one more. This one's pretty long. February 11th. To priests who have been selected as missionaries of mercy. On confession, Pope Francis said, quote, if someone comes to you and feels something must be removed from him, but perhaps he is unable to say it, but you understand, it's all right. He says it this way, with the gesture of coming. First condition. Second, he is repentant. If someone comes to you, it is because he doesn't want to fall into these situations, but he doesn't dare say it. He is afraid to say it and then not able to do it. But if he cannot do it, I don't know, some kind of a Latin here. And the Lord understands these things, the language of gestures. Have open arms to understand what is inside that heart that cannot be said or said this way, somewhat because of shame. You understand me. You must receive everyone with the language with which they can speak. Finally, I would like to mention a component of which there is not much talk, but which is in fact detrimental: shame. It is not easy to put oneself before another man, although knowing that he represents God, and to confess one's sins. One feels shame, be it for what one has done, but it for having to confess it to another. Shame is an intimate sentiment that cuts into one's personal life, and it requires on the part of the confessor an attitude of respect and encouragement. Often shame makes one mute, and the gesture, the language of the gesture. Unquote. Well, I don't get this stuff with the gestures. You're supposed to confess your sins with your mouth, He's getting into this thing about gestures, as if, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can go face to face. I've gone face to face to confession with a priest, but mostly it's just the traditional way. So I don't have this gesture thing. What is he supposed to do? Like read your gestures across the screen or something? Who knows? Okay, that's it. So we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.